Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a quick, nice 15-minute break. Uh, I've shared the link in the chat to register for the final part of this session, part 6. Uh, yeah, please do register. And once you've done, let's continue building. If you're joining me for the very first time, we are building a online song maker, and we are nearly reaching there. We are kind of on the sequencer part of it, if I have to say, right? uh yeah, that's what we are on. So we wrote some code to highlight a ruler cell. So we'll have a sequencer. You can think of it as a beam of light, let's say. So a beam of light that will go over every column that we see here. Okay, that's it. Now let's go back and let's start coding the next bit. So the next few things that we are going to do is, like, let's talk about the big picture of what they are going to do before we start writing the code for it. So user will click on a play button, which will call a function start playback. The start playback internally will call playback step, which is basically step by step or column by column playing of notes. Okay, so playback step will be our biggest or the most major, or the one which is going to do the heavy work, the heavy lifting. It is going to play the sound for the current column. It will then call this highlight column function that we have written, which will highlight that particular column, and then it will move to the next column, and then next column, so on and so forth. Okay, then we'll have, so this is when the user clicks on the play button, it will call the start playback. The start playback will then uh, call playback step. Playback step will play the notes that are currently active or highlighted in the column, and then it will move to next column, and so on and so forth. If the user clicks on stop, we'll have a stop playback. Will also clean the grid and sorry, not clean the grid, but more like cancel everything that's going to happen. There are two more buttons, which is clear and randomize. So clear will clear the whole grid. It will make all the values false. It will remove all the active cells, and we'll have a randomize button, which will fill the grid with random patterns. Okay, very simply. So these are a few functions that we are going to create and then call them as we start adding event listeners on our play button, our clear button, our randomize button. Okay. Whew. That's a lot. Let's start doing it. So we'll go in the reverse order, and we'll start with the function playback step. So this function, step one, the first check that we are going to do, if it is not playing, if not is playing, or not audio context, in that case return. Okay, so since I don't have to write anything else, so I'm not wrapping it in, oops, I'm not wrapping it in in curly brackets. I can simply do an inline return here, since there's nothing else that I'm going to type. So that is why I'm doing an inline return here. Next is, so what I'm doing is, if the is playing is false, okay, which actually initially it is false, so somewhere we need to set it to true, but before we call the playback step, we need to set it to true. If we call playback step and is playing is false, it will not do anything below, it will just return out of the function. Const now equals to audio context dot current time. Okay, so this will get the current time of the audio context. So think of it as the t0 or time at 0. Okay. Okay, so the next thing is grid state. So let's create a variable const grid state equals to, if you remember the grid refs, we had we have already used the grid inner and ruler, so the only thing left is grid state, which will return us the value at that of that particular row and column. Okay, so that particular cell, let's say, so it will tell me the on off state of that particular cell. Now we are going to play all the active nodes of a particular cell. So I'm going to, so let's say, uh, let r equals to 0, r less than the number of rows, r plus plus. So we're going over each row. Okay, so what I'm saying is, if let's say you have highlighted these three nodes, so we need to check which, like the column, of course, the row. So the column will start from this column and it will go on and on. But which nodes to play or which frequencies of these nodes, that will be by looping over all the rows that we have, checking which ones are highlighted, or basically which ones have the value as true, and those are the ones that we are going to play. So next we are going to say if in the grid state at that particular row, and we'll need to use the current column. Yep, this current column, we can use that current column. So initially it starts at 0. Then we will call the, you remember the play note at function? We'll give it that particular row and we'll give it the now that we have just created. So now this function makes much more sense, right? Uh, we'll start at like different sounds, different noises, or different levels of loudness, basically. Okay, cool. So this is what we are doing. Grid state at r and current column, play note at r comma now. Okay, so what we are doing, so imagine like if I highlight this, this and this, so row, this will be, let's say, 0 1 2 3 4 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, yeah. So 0 4 and 7, these notes need to be played. So we will uh, yeah, loop over. So when initially we start at the current column, which is set to 0th column. So of course we always start from here. So we, at the 0th one, we will play the note at row 0. So column 0 is already set. Row 0, row 4 and row 7. These are the notes that we will play, and we'll play the note at whatever is the row and the current time. Okay. Now, when we play the note, we'll also highlight the column. So we'll give it the current column, which is initially at 0, and we'll highlight it by setting the value to true. Okay, you remember the on parameter? The on is initially set to true. Then we will say const previous column. So when we move to the next column, okay, so we highlight the column, which means that, okay, this is the current column where we are playing the note. But once we move to the next column, we want to remove the highlight from the previous column. So let's first calculate the previous column by doing current column minus 1 plus the total number of calls modulo calls. Okay. So imagine the current column is 0. So 0 minus 1 will give me minus 1 plus the total number of columns, which is currently set to 60. So this will give me minus 1 plus 60, which will be 59. 59 modulo 60 will give me how much? So let's do current column is 0 minus 1 plus 60, and then we find a modulus using 60, so it will return me 59. So the previous column, remove the highlight, we'll need to remove the highlight from the previous column, where the previous column is going to be 59. Highlight column, previous column, comma, false. Okay. And let's move to the next column. So I'm going to say current column equals to current column plus 1 and modulo total number of calls. And we need, did we have, oh yeah, we did have a timer ID, which was the timer at set to null initially, but now we need to set it to some value. So let's do that. We will say timer ID equals to, we start a timeout, and that will depend on the playback step itself and the current column duration in milliseconds, and we will call that function. Okay, cool. Uh, Looking for any questions. Did I not ask if any questions, anyone? Okay. Uh, so what are we trying to do is very simply, we are trying to loop over all the columns. Okay. So let's go over this code step by step. I'll start by a smaller number of, let's say, 16 columns instead of 60, so that it's visually visible. Let's go over these lines step by step. Step one is we are checking if it is currently playing or not playing. If we are supposed to be playing or not playing, that depends on if there is an audio context, or if it is, if is playing is set to false. Okay. Then we are using this now from audio context dot current time. So we are getting the time from audio context because that follows a precise clock, let's say. And yep, that's the only reason we're not using our current timestamp of our browser or our system. Then we have the grid state, which will have all the on off values. So that's fine. Then we do the, like, get loop over the rows. So if I am, like, let's say on column number 1 and row number 2 and row number 5. Okay. So then it will go over the rows, check which ones are highlighted, and it has to play both of those rows, the frequencies of both of those rows together. Okay, so that's all it means. Then as you play the node at that point, we highlight that column, and let's say, okay, cool. Uh, so let's say we highlight that column. Now we also need to calculate what was the previous column, assuming, let's say, that if the current column is 5, okay, 5, and then let's say we minus subtract 1 and plus 16. So this should return me, so 5 minus 1, 4, 4 plus 16 is 20, and 20 modulo 16 will return me 4. Okay, so this means that if the current column is 5, then the previous column number was 4. The current column number was 4, this would return me 4 minus 1, 3. 3 plus 16 is 19. 19 modulo 16 should return me 3. Okay. And then we go back and back. So when we actually are at 0, okay, so 0 minus 1 plus 16 will return me minus 1 plus 16, which is 15, modulo 16, which would return me 15, which means we'll have a circular pattern here. So if you are on the 0th one, then this would not be highlighted, of course. But if, let's say, our sequencer moves from 0 to 1 to 2, like so on and so forth, when it reaches here and it circles back and starts here, when it reaches here, it will highlight this column. When it circles back and starts again at this point, we need to remove the highlight from this one. So on the first run, this would anyways be not be highlighted, so it doesn't really matter. But as we move on and we reach the end and we circle back, that's when this value would make much more sense, okay, for the column 0. Okay, and then we highlight the previous column false, okay, which means we are removing the highlight technically. Then in this part, we are moving to the next column by adding 1 to the current column and modulo columns basically. So if, let's say, current column is 4, so 4 plus 1, 5. If the current column is 4 plus 1, then this will return me 5. And then we do a modulo of, if I have total 16 columns, then this should be 5. Yeah, right. So it will tell me that the new current column is going to be whatever was the previous current column plus 1 modulo the 16 or the total number of columns that you have. Okay, and the timer ID. So this is when should we call this same function? Okay, so this timer ID, we are saying that call. So the set timeout, it allows me to schedule something after certain delay. Okay, so set timeout allows me to schedule something after certain delay. I'm saying that schedule calling this same function playback step again after certain delay, where the certain delay is get column duration ms. Okay, so set timeout allows me to schedule something after certain delay, we are going to say that call the same function again and again and again, depending on this get column duration ms. And what was this get column duration ms? If you remember, this was nothing but our beats per minute calculation. Okay, so we are saying that call, like, let's say you have these highlights. Okay, so first will call this playback step on this column, and then we move to the next column after how many milliseconds we move it, let's say after 10 milliseconds. And then which function should I call again? The same function that we called here, which allowed us to play the beat, highlight the whole column, and you know move to the next one. So we'll call the same function again and again and again and again, and we'll keep on doing that in a loop. So the set timeout will call the same function again, which will do all of this, like all the things that we have told it to do after certain duration. Okay, so that is what we are doing in the timer ID. Cool. Uh, okay, next function that we want to create is going to be set controls disabled, and we'll pass it a parameter of disabled. Okay, so this function, the reason why I'm creating this function is because when you start playing, the user should not be allowed to change the tempo mid song playing, or let's say change the sound mid song playing, or clear or randomize mid song playing. So that is why I'm going to disable those buttons when the user starts playing. So I'm going to say the tempo input, the clear button, the randomize button, and even the wave select button. So for each of them, for each element, what I want to do, if that element exists, of course, uh, I'm going to do nice checks here. I'm going to set their disabled property equal to the disabled that we get as input to this particular function. Okay, so when we start playing, then we'll call this set controls disabled function, and will pass disabled equals to true, which should disable all these buttons. Okay, now the final two functions, and then just a few event listeners. Okay, so we are nearly there, folks. Nearly there. Start play back. So this is one function, and we'll have another function to stop play back. Okay, so two more functions to go. Any questions, anyone, before we move ahead? Okay, going to take the silence as golden and move ahead. Okay, start playback. Okay, so start playback. Inside this, the first thing that we are going to do is ensure that audio context actually exists. Okay, now in the audio context state, there is a suspended. If I go over to MDN, search for audio context. So there is a closed state, there is an interrupted state, there is a running state, and there is a suspended state. So these are the four possible values of audio context. We have closed, interrupted, running, or suspended. when we start an audio context, it goes into a running state, which means it is running normally. And if uh, you manually, let's say, click on pause button, then the audio context would go into a suspended state. Okay. So someone would have called the suspend method using audio context dot suspend, which would have marked the audio context as suspended. So this means, so in our code, we will have, like, in the stop playback, let's say, we can set the state to suspended or stop. Okay, so we can do all of those things. Hmm. So we can mark them like manually, let's say suspended or something else, and we can then also resume like based on that. So right now I'm just going to leave one quick if condition. We're saying that if the state is suspended, then in that case I want you to call the resume. So if we have a suspended state, then we can call the resume, which will kind of resume the running of the context. And what else? Before we start playing, we should also say if it is already playing, then simply just return. Ah, okay. So what we have done so far, step one, we need to ensure that the audio context exists. If audio context exists and it is created for the very first time, it will be in a running state. Okay, but we are doing a check saying that let's also check if it is not in a running state, it is not in a stop state, it is actually in a suspended state. If it is in a suspended state, then resume the audio context. Okay, so this is like telling our the music conductor that, okay, let's say the music conductor was playing, then someone's phone rang and the music conductor has paused. So we are checking if it was paused, resume rather than start from the very beginning. Okay, very simply. That's what we are doing. And if it is already playing, if the conductor is already playing, if the whole music is already playing, and you click on a play button again, uh, just don't do anything. Okay, return. Okay, that's what this line means. And since it is a one, like, we can make it one liner because there's nothing else that we are doing here. Now is playing, we can set it to true. Initially, remember, is playing was false. This is the first time we are setting it to true in the start playback. Now on the play button that we have, we can change the text content to stop. Then we'll call the set controls disabled and pass it the disabled flag as true, which means if you have started playing, you're not allowed to change any of the other, you're not allowed to click on any other buttons, or you're not allowed to uh, change the sound type or the tempo or anything else. Cool. Then we'll set the current column equals to 0 and playback step is going to be called. So when we start the playback step, like we have ensured, yes, everything is fine. Then we set the is playing to true. We change the text of the button from play to stop. playing or stop, then we set all the controls to be disabled, so you are not allowed to change all of these. Then we set, like, you start from the beginning, so start from the current column, which we set to 0, and we call the playback step function, and inside the playback step function it will start playing. Now in the stop playback, if it is not playing already and you're trying, somehow you are in a stop position, just return. Next is playing. If you click on the stop button, is playing should change to false, right? Then the play button dot text content, it should change to play again. When it was playing, when it initially it was play, you clicked on it, it changed to stop. Now it is stop and you click on it, so which means you're telling it to stop, it should change to play. If it is now stopped, then you remember our timeout, our set timeout, which was going to call this function again and again and again, that should stop happening. So we are going to clear the timer ID, okay, which means we are going to stop the loop of playing. Then we should also, if we stop in the middle, we should also remove all the columns that are highlighted, or more like the current column which was highlighted, we need to remove the highlight from that column. So I'm going to say let current column, let's say C equals to 0, C less than false, and C plus plus. That's a joke. uh, Highlight column. The current column, set it to false. So when you pause the playback, all the columns, so the column that we were highlighting needs to go back to its non-highlighted state, and the controls that were disabled now need to be enabled. So set controls disabled is now false, which means disabled is false, which means they are enabled. Okay, it's like that vice versa way of thinking. Okay, next is, I think we'll do this and then take a quick pause and see if there is a play button, which I think should have be add event listener on this. It is a button, so we know that a button can have a click event, and then we'll have a callback function. And depending on if it is playing already and someone clicks on the button, then you need to call the stop playback. Else, you need to call the start playback. Okay, so there we go. Let's highlight a few. Change from sign to square. Click on it, so you know what's the highlight, and it has changed from play to stop. And these are currently not clickable. Stop. Okay, so that is, okay, so that is our music. And if I change it from square to, let's say, sine, it's more of a beat, like more softer sound. Go for triangle. Oh, spelling mistake. Yep. Try angle. Let's try saw. Cool. So this is our music part done. Any questions, anyone? Let me push all of this before we add two more things. Also found a bug in the code thanks to us playing it out, trying it out. There was a spelling mistake. It was spelled triangle was spelled wrong. So session 6, play pause mechanism and bug fix triangle spelling. There we go. So you can now have a look at the code that we have right now for the play pause mechanism. Everything works currently. So if I click on play, changes to pause, the highlights, it reverses, highlights the other things. The yellow highlight, I think I'm going to change it to, like, let's say 1 pixel, and I'm going to keep the header as well as this one the same color. Where was our playing call? Yep, there we go. 1 pix, 2 pixels actually. And let's make it lighter, and instead of outline we can make this a background color. So now if I start, oh, 2 pixel solid is not a background color thingy. So now you can see what it is currently highlighting. If I change this to, let's say, 60 columns, I'll have more columns to play on. Now this is boring when you have to manually select all of these. So what we are going to do is fix the randomize button or add the functionality of randomize. But for now, let's change this to triangle. Okay. Yeah, it does play. I don't know if you all can hear it though. I'm not sure. Can you all hear it? Like, not really not sure. Oh, don't worry. I mean, like, if you follow all the streams line by line, like all 6 of them, I think it should be quite understanding from that perspective. Okay, it will be much more understandable. So it should not be that complex, but I'm glad that you like it. We'll also deploy it, because we have time to deploy it. So we'll also deploy it on Netlify so that you all can play with it. Cool. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do, so this kind of has everything, but a few things that I want to do is step 1, tempo input dot add event listener. So you remember that select input, not select, that input box. So if I want to change this to 240, as you can see, it's moving quite quicker than like normal. So that is basically adding an event listener to listen to is change, and we can say if is playing. So I'm going to remove the tempo input, so we can change it mid play. We'll allow changing it mid play. Actually, when we'll also allow selecting the wave, changing the wave mid play. Let's allow changing the wave and changing the tempo input mid play. But we'll have to clear the previous timers, unfortunately. Like, we can decide on that. Let's say playback step, and we'll call the playback step again. The clear button, we need to write some code for the clear button and the randomize button. Okay, so those are last two things. So clear button dot add event listener. Since it's a button, it will have a click event, and now a callback function. A callback function is nothing but a name of a function that should run when someone clicks. Okay, we are going to say const grid state. Let's take a reference to the current grid refs dot grid state, then const grid inner equals to grid refs dot grid inner. Now we need to loop over all the grids. So clear button should clear out all of these highlighted boxes. Okay, very simply, when someone clicks on it, it should loop over all the rows and all the columns, find all the values that are true or highlighted, and make them false. Okay, so unfortunately we'll have to loop over twice. We are going to say for let each row which starts from 0th row then for each row we'll also go over each column. Less than total number of columns. Okay, now how do we get the cell index? We'll do cell index equals to each row multiplied by calls plus each call. Const cell equals to grid inner. So this is what we did before as well, so I'm not going to dive deep into this part. Dot children at that particular cell index. Now for the grid state at that particular row and at that particular column, set it to false. Okay, so we don't care if it was true or false, set it to false. And cell dot class list dot remove, we were adding a class called as active. Remove that class, and that's it. Okay, so now if I, let's say, choose this, and I click on clear, it will go over all of them and remove that active class. Okay, happens quite quickly. And finally, one last thing is random button or randomize button or random randomize button. Yeah, okay. Add event listener and let's say a click event again because it's a button. You so notice the difference. Whenever it is a button, like I know it is a button, so I'm adding a click event listener. But in tempo input, I added a change event because it was a input box. Okay, so randomize button. Uh, okay, let's say const probability equals to 0.2. Okay, so this is probability of the note being active. Okay, so we are going to have 20% probability of the note to be active. I'm going to copy these two lines. Also going to copy these, and we'll also close these. Okay, so we'll loop over or go over each row and column. So we'll go over each cell, and the probability of that cell to be marked as active, or let's say it marked as green color, is going to be 20%. Okay, 0.2 is 20%. So in here, I'm going to say const is active equals to, so there is a math.random function that exists by default. If math.random is less than the probability, then we'll give it is active. Okay, let's try this out. Okay, so I'm going to say let's just say math.random. If it is less than 0.2, false, 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 true. Okay, randomly it is true. After I don't know how many iterations, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, and the 8th iteration it was randomly true. So math.random will return a value between 0 and 1. It will return a value between 0 and 1, and we are checking if it is less than true. Whenever it is less than 0.2, did I say less than true? Sorry. I mean, whenever it is, we are checking if it is less than 0.2. Whenever it is less than 0.2, we will say mark that cell as active. So we are trying to not mark everything as active. We are going for few cells to be randomly marked as active cell. Now I'm going to say grid state at that particular row and at that particular column. I call it each row and each column, but they are more like the row and the column. So randomly we will mark one of the cells as active. And what is active? It is, we remember, if you remember, these grid states are nothing but a value of true and false, right? They are just true and false, like filled with true and false. Initially everything is false. Randomly we will mark some of them true. Okay, randomly we'll mark some of them true. That's what's happening right here. And that randomness is dependent on this condition, where this condition is now dependent on this particular variable, this probability variable. Can I copy this? So cell index would be, instead of each row, we now call it R into number of columns plus C. The cell itself would be grid inner dot children at that particular cell index. And I'm going to do cell dot class list dot, instead of remove, I'm going to use the toggle, and we are going to mark it is active, depending on is active. I think that's it. So now let's clear everything. Let's click on randomize. Randomly, some of the cells are chosen as active, and it goes all the way up to this. I choose a square wave. I choose the tempo as 40 and I play. And in the middle of it, I increase the tempo. Let's make the tempo 240. And it, like, goes faster. I think a triangular wave. Okay, there we go. So that's our song maker project. Now, one last thing that I want to do is, this main is called as soon as the JavaScript is downloaded. Okay, so if I go over to our network, no, not performance, network tab, clear this and disable the cache, and I also reduce the size, and I reload this. Index.html is downloaded, then styles.css is downloaded, and then it downloads the main.js. The only problem is that as soon as it gets downloaded, the main.js or the JavaScript file gets downloaded, it applies to this DOM. Okay, it applies it to the DOM. Now, if you have a very big HTML, or if for some reason, okay, so for some very weird reason, assume that your JavaScript got downloaded before your styles.css was downloaded, then you will see a flash of JavaScript added, JavaScript removed, JavaScript added. We don't want that. We want to wait until the DOM is fully rendered. Okay, so the word is, the DOM is fully loaded, or the DOM content has loaded. We want to wait up until that time before the main function runs. So I've used the terminology. So there's the hint. There is a DOM content loaded event. Okay, so this fires when the whole HTML document has been completely parsed. Okay, so this is to say that if, let's say, you have a huge HTML and that was, let's say, not completely painted, but JavaScript tries to run on it before the whole HTML has been rendered or something, then in such scenarios, we can use this DOM content loaded event listener, and we can do something. Okay, so what I'm going to do is move this main inside a window.add event listener, where window refers to my, let's say, tab here. Okay, window is nothing but my tab, and I'm going to say, when the DOM content has loaded, in that case, I want you to console.log welcome to song maker, and then we'll call the main function. So now if I go over here and I reload, You see it comes welcome to song maker, and the DOM has loaded. Let me randomize. Let me change it to a triangular wave. Brace yourselves. And it works, right? And it works. Now, this is very dynamic, which means that you can change the number of columns to, let's say, from 60 to 16, for example. Randomize. Cool. Uh, you can also adjust some of the values. So, example, the gain value, let's say I start at 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, and oh, forgot to actually add beats. Okay, what if I set it to 1? I set it to 1, and then increase it by zero point 0.2, increase it by 0.1 and zero point 0.5. Just play around with it to see. Play around with it to see what difference each of those values make. So that will give you a better idea of what's going on. Okay. What I would also suggest is create some constant variables at the top of the file so that you don't have to go searching for them. All the constants can be up top here, and you can just adjust those values uh, without going through the whole code and then finding, oh, I want to adjust this value, I want to adjust that value. Everything is very, very, very dynamic in general. The last thing I think is we need to reverse these, but I'll leave it on you all to do it right now. Let me push this. And meanwhile, does anyone have any questions? We finally completed it. Yay! Okay. So I have pushed it, which means you should have the latest commits. Okay, there we go. You should have all the latest values, all the latest code, not values, sorry, all the latest code. Now, before we have quite some time, we have like approximately 45 minutes. So, a few things that I want to very quickly do and show is these values, these constant values, rows and columns, they are coming as a part of uh, the code. Okay, so if you run this code on the browser, if we deploy it and you run this, let's say you play, if you want to increase the number of rows, the number of columns or the number of rows here, you will have to redeploy everything. So we want to make it very dynamic. We want to make it easier for user to change the values. So there are multiple ways to do it. One way could be like we give users the input boxes. That's one way. But because this is a beginner week and I want to show one more thing, so I'm going to show you how you can utilize the local storage or even the session storage. Okay, so a session storage will only be present for the session and it will be deleted later, or the local storage which will always be like until the user actually manually goes and deletes it, it will always be present. I'm going to focus on the session storage for this one. Okay, so we'll create a session storage like we'll read values from session storage, but we'll also have some default values very simply. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so since no one asked any questions, I'm assuming that it makes sense. Let's do this. So these two values, I'll show it for these two values, but you can also what do you call, you can also add more values here, and yeah, you can read it from there. Cool. So what I'm going to do, since we have such a dynamic code, I am going to say session storage or window dot session storage dot get item. I'm going to give the variable as song maker underscore rows. Okay, so get the value of this song maker underscore rows and actually convert it to an integer. So parse int or let's say set it default to 8. Similarly, I'm going to copy this and say dot underscore calls and set it default to 16. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set these values in the session storage back. So I'm going to do session storage dot set item. Okay. So the reason is so that if you don't know what is the name of the variable, you can just go into the session storage and find these values there. Song maker. Okay. So now if I go to my code, clear everything, reload, song maker underscore rows has a default value of 8 and song maker underscore calls has a value of 16 already set. Okay. So this is in the applications tab in the session storage. And now I can change this value to, let's say, 40, click somewhere outside, reload, and now it should have 40 of them. Okay, 40 columns. You can also increase the number of rows. Example, you can also actually, the names of these nodes, you can also read them from the session storage. So I'm going to say, actually, let's make this window.session storage and window.session storage because that's a good idea. Similarly, the names of the nodes, I can say that window.session storage.get item or set it default to this. So get item as song maker underscore notes. So now we also allow the user to set all the note names, let's say. Okay, and we'll also set that default by doing window.session storage.set item song maker note names, and that should be equal to this note names. Okay, perfect. The only problem is it seems to only set as the first value in this array, or the last value actually, technically, in this array. So we need to just go one step ahead and set it as JSON dot parse. And here, when we try to set it, you need to stringify it. So everything in the session storage is a string. So this to do can be removed. Everything in the session storage is a string. Am I missing something? I definitely think I have messed up something. So note names will be this one. Oh, I don't think this will be a JSON.parse. Wait, I'm confused. I think this, yep, perfect. Yeah, there we go. So now even the node names, if I reload, yes. So the node names are also set as an like it looks like an array, but it's actually a string. Okay, so we will try to read the item. So window.session_storage.get item, whatever you give here, and once we have it, okay, so we need to actually add a condition. Once we have it, we need to parse it, else so this will be a problem. Can I just do JSON dot parse on this value, or set it to this? Oh, sorry. If I go over here and I add, let's say after this, a C4, okay, I added a C5, let's say, and I do a quick reload. Yep, I get a new note. Perfect. That's what I wanted. I wonder why it is so small though. We'll have to check what else makes it dynamic. I mean, ideally it should have been dynamic. Ah, the height of this box. Maybe that's why. So if I go into the styles and the grid layout is fine, the min height should also be the fit content, and the max height should also be fit content. Oh, that didn't work. We'll need to check the CSS of this, see why the grid is not expanding. Maybe it has something to do with the grid layout. Okay, we'll need to check the CSS, unfortunately, for how do we make it dynamic. But hey, you learned something today, that okay, we can add these values in the session storage, read from the session storage. So these values are singular values, so they are just numbers, and they are stored as a string. By default, everything in session storage is stored as a string. That is why, since rows and columns need to be numbers, we do a parse int. Note names, on the other hand, it's an array. So when you try to store it, you have to stringify all it to make it a string before storing. And when you read it, you cannot read array as a string. Like, you can read it, but you'll have to pass it to note names, and you cannot loop over the whole string and everything that we have done. That is why I use json.parse to convert it from string to normal array. Okay. So this is some quick add-ons. This will make it more dynamic, actually. So now a user can go and change the values in the session storage by going to the application tab and yeah, changing these values. And if they accidentally delete everything and just reload, they should get all the values back. Okay. And they can change it. Let's say this is 24. Oh, I realized why it was not changing in height. I had set the rows to 8, but I had 9 note names. And let's say 44. And if I add A3, comma, B3, comma, see, I don't know, some note names, and I do a quick reload, there we go. We get more columns, we get more rows. How many are these? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Quick reload, and there we go. Persists and is there. Okay. And then you can randomize on those many and then change to something. Play. Right? You can, as I said, you can take all the variables up top. Once you take them up top, you can also store all of them in the session storage and allow users to play with it in a more dynamic sort of way. Now it keeps complaining about this one thing, that the fav icon is missing, because the icon here is missing. So we need to fix that error before we deploy it. I have half an hour. We should be able to fix it and deploy it. I'm going to search for fav icon generator, and there is yeah, this one. I'm going to go text to ICO, and this is song maker, or let's say emoji to ICO. Can I search for a music icon? Okay, there's no music here. Yeah, musical keyboard, musical note, let's say musical score. Okay, and that's it. So I'm going to download this into multiple formats, and then we have to just add it. I'm going to take this screen away from my share because I have no idea where it will download. Where is this project currently? Okay, there we go. It has downloaded the zip of that folder. So, well, I would need to unzip it. Uh, Let me do that. All I did was just download this thing. Da, 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 da. Okay, I have unzipped it. I can delete the zip folder. I will leave all of these values. So all of these, but I'm going to move. Let's change this to logo. Okay. I'll delete actually a few of these because I don't want them to be deployed. Uh, this is song maker. Song maker. Short name is supposed does not mean that it needs to be written in short form. Fav icon ICO 32 cross 32, 16 cross 16, Apple Touch icon, Android Chrome, and Android Chrome. Perfect. So we have a few logos, and to use it, we have to just do what they suggest here. So now I'm going to go over to my index.html, and right after this one, I'm going to give a reference to the icons. So this is fine. This is fine. I think I need one more. Link to the fav icon. And okay, so the reference of all of these are at the root, but actually for me it is inside the logo folder, right? But the fav icon.ico, I will move it one level up outside so that this reference is proper. And how many icons are being used? The Android Chrome icons are not being used, so I'll delete them. Apple Touch icon is used, fav icon 32 cross 32 is used, fav icon 16 cross 16 is used, site.web manifest is being used, and the fav icon.ico is being used. Perfect. I think this is good. Now comes the last bit of these sessions, which is to deploy them on somewhere so that you all can use it. Let me log into my Netlify account. Okay, so if you all remember the last two projects that we deployed, and like we built and deployed, one of them was Color Conjure, which is published on colorconjure.netlify.app. We all did this. Then there was the Doodle platform. Yeah, this was the other project that I was thinking about the other day. We created this Doodle platform, if you remember, where we were like, oh, how about, allowing us to doodle and stuff like that. So we did fill with color, all those things. We could also choose a color and fill that. We had a whole brush thing. We had like different shapes. I think someone actually contributed to build the star, arrow, and polygon. So someone had done an open source contribution technically to build these projects. And the third project that I'm going to deploy today would be this songmaker project. Let me push this git add all. Also, if I go to songmaker now and I do, oh, web manifest failed. Why did that fail? That should also be slash logo slash web manifest. This is correct, right? Dot slash logo folder slash Apple Touch Rugby. Is it because of the dot slash? Dot slash dot slash still is complaining. Android Chrome. But who is calling for it? Ah, I should not have deleted those. Okay, my bad. I think it's being called inside the, yep, thought so. Let me undo that from my bin. There we go. That one is back. Let's also undo this one. Yes, please. Android dash Chrome. What do you mean it's not a valid image? Send dot slash of the project. I can't do anything else. Perfect. Oh, finally. And now it has a logo right there, right up on top. So just had to be very specific about where you will find these logo files. The dot represents the current folder. So that's how, just, try to be nicest. Okay, cool. So that's done. Thank you. Let's do a git add all. So now no one's complaining and I can see a fav icon up top here. Now let's do a git add all, git commit session 6 added fav icon and git push. So this should push all the latest changes. It should have also pushed all the whole logo and everything. Now all that is left is the deployment. So let's try this. I have no idea what it will ask for. Oh my god. Okay, I'm going to take this away from screen because, well, once again I have to enter passwords and whatnot. This I'm assuming slash presuming is going to be two-factor authentication. Blah 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 blah. Yes. There we go, finally. So web song maker, web song maker, Published directory would be song-maker.js, I think. Okay, I think it should be this one. Let's try. If it works, then fine. Otherwise, there's another way to deploy this. Okay, it says it's published. Oh yeah, it is. Nice. Quick, right? There we go. And now if I go into the network tab, no, application tab, session storage. Yeah, it also has all the values that I need. If I change this to 40, let's say, and I reload, I should have 40 columns now. And I randomize and I change it to a triangle, make it, let's say, 60 tempo. Okay, this is my new jam. Cool. So here's the project for you all to play with. It's in the scope. Any questions, anyone? There we go. websongmaker.netlify.app. Okay, you'll need a different one. So in the settings, all I did was I chose which directory to deploy, which was the song-maker.js, because I have an extra folder basically inside my project. So that's all I did. And yeah, everything else, I think technically Netlify figured it out. I didn't have to do anything. I just have to go like, yeah, here's the folder. I want you to deploy this folder, figure out everything. And yeah, it's available right there for you all to play with. And yes, that's it. We are nearing the end. Like I have like last 15, not even 15, less than 15 minutes left. Any questions, anyone? You all can play with it also once again for the very last time, I guess. Here's the repo link. Let me add some description. This was online, not online, web song maker project to play audio in browser, to play music in browser. Well, we do have a website. Yay! So let's go over to our website. And there we go. Don't want to see all of these. This was built using plain HTML, CSS, and raw JavaScript. Because why not? Okay, you don't need all the fancy libraries. The README could be improved a bit. I know. So I'll improve the README. And with respect to the features, what other features can you add? So when I was thinking about this project, when I was trying to think like, okay, what other things we could add, what other, systems we could have, blah, blah, blah. I was like, you know what if we have an option or a system where a user is allowed to, let's say, import or export some of the tunes. Okay, so imagine that you can import someone else's tune into your system. Like one way to do it is to actually like save all these notes in the session storage. So you can save these values as 100, like 1 and 0. Why 1 and 0? Because if I go over to the console and I do 1 double equals to true, okay, double equals to, not triple, double equals to, so this is a loose comparison, it returns true. If I do one triple equals to true, which is exact comparison or a strict comparison, so then it will not compare 1 and true, because 1 is a number, true is a boolean. So then in this case, are these two values equal? No, they are not. So that's why it returns false. But in a loose comparison, it will say yes, 1 means true and 0 means, in a loose comparison, it will be false. Okay, 0 double equals to false. Yes, 0 is actually equals to false. So in a way, you can make a loose comparison between 1 and 0. So you remember that our grid is basically true, false and true. You can change it to 1 and 0. So someone can save all the values as 0 initially, and whatever is highlighted is 1. Then uh, we can have a button here called as import button, which will open a dialog box or a modal. In that modal, you can paste these ones and zeros, and that is your, like, plus you can also paste the tempo, the sound, uh, yeah, and that will be basically your way of sharing music. Okay, so isn't that a cool idea? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? If you don't, then let me share what I mean. Okay, so this is what I wanted to build, but sorry, didn't have time for all of it. But if I randomize this, okay, and I click on export, we can have this kind of pattern. Okay, and let's say I clear all of this, go to import, paste that pattern, or even change this from sine to, let's say, triangle. Okay, import, paste this pattern, and click on the import button. It will change the sound to, let's say, sine. It will highlight the correct uh, cells, and then click. Okay, so yeah, this is one way of, let's say, sharing the songs. So import will give you a dialog box where you can paste, you can tell the tempo, the waves. So this way it will allow users to share music, right? A very simple way, very elegant, very simple way. And you can save this in the session storage, okay, or the local storage. The only difference in code between session storage and local storage is this word. So instead of saying session storage, if you change it to local storage, and now if you go to the application tab in the local storage, oops, wrong project. Here we go, the right project. There we go. It's now in your local storage. Okay. So that's the only difference between changing from session storage to local storage. The difference in general is local storage is persistent until a user clears it all. Okay, session storage will clear at the end of the session. Think of a session as closing the browser. You close the browser, you have lost it. You close the tab, you have lost it. Cool. Any questions, anyone? If not, then one last thing, feedback. I know you don't have a way to provide feedback for this 6th session, but you can just reach out to someone if you have any feedback for me. Like, reach out to MLH team or someone and just let them know if there's anything. You can email someone from MLH team if you want. You can I don't know, provide feedback for in part 4. No, I wouldn't say that. Provide feedback for the session that you attended. Uh, yeah, anyways, or you can provide me feedback in the next Global Hack Week that I do, whatever be the case. I hope you all enjoyed these sessions. You learned something. You learned how to do vanilla JavaScript. And I'm sorry that we were not able to complete the React part. But also, when I started this beginners week, I realized that not everyone knows JavaScript. So I think this was a good refresher that ways. Uh, what else? We have deployed the project, play with the project. The code is out there. Play with the code. And if you have any suggestions, the feedback. So thanks for the question. Unfortunately, in the feedback, you have to choose which session you're providing the feedback for. This was music on web session 6, but it's not in the drop down actually. Okay, since it's not in the drop down, you won't be able to provide feedback. Sorry. So session 5 and session 6 were not planned, but when I was not able to finish everything in session 4 because I was going too slow, I requested for 2 additional sessions, but they are not part of the feedback. So unfortunately, you won't be able to provide feedbacks. Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, the last thing that I was saying was you can raise pull request for the project. So I welcome every pull request that you want to send over. I'm strict with pull requests a bit. So example, the last pull request that I was receiving was the Doodle platform. Okay, so there were a few pull requests that I actually closed, 2 pull requests that I actually closed, and there are 2 open pull requests which I definitely have requested changes for. I forgot to look at this one. I will take a look at this one. Oh, this is nice. Okay. So a few, like if you raise a pull request, there are also a list of open issues. I'll be happy to review them. I'll be happy to merge them in and they can be deployed. So in the web song maker, one of the newest issues would be, this is a feature and allow sharing of music. Okay, this is the feature request. Provide 2 buttons import and export to allow sharing music notes along with other details. This is going to be a enhancement. It's a good first issue. Help wanted. Not help wanted, more like, yeah, if anyone wants to contribute to this, this is a feature request. Allow sharing of music. If anyone wants, please feel free to submit a pull request which adds this new feature to our web song maker. Otherwise, thank you so much, everyone, and I hope to see you all in the next Global Hack Week. One last time, any questions, anyone? Here's the deployed version. Play with it. And here's the code. Okay, I'll take silence as golden. Thank you so much once again, everyone. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next Global Hack Week tomorrow or today, depending on the time zone you are in. Last day of Global Hack Week. After this session, after my session, you have a good 2-hour break, and then you can join Alberto in building the creative first web page part 4 of the session. Okay. So yeah, just do that, and cheers everyone. Bye bye.